She can't even read the menu. The billionaire's voice boomed through Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant as his laughter echoed off crystal chandeliers. But Richard Blackwood had just made the most expensive mistake of his life. The woman he was humiliating held secrets that would destroy his empire, topple senators, and expose a conspiracy that threatened the very foundations of American democracy. This is the story of Madison Harper, a waitress who couldn't pronounce French wine names but spoke 5 languages fluently. A woman dismissed as invisible who was actually the most dangerous person in the room. How one moment of cruelty would unravel a plot worth billions and prove that sometimes those society overlooks are the ones with the power to save it. Before we explore deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Madison Harper wasn't supposed to be serving tables. Born in Birmingham, Alabama, she was the daughter of a single mother who cleaned office buildings. While other children struggled with basic reading, Madison devoured advanced texts. By 12, she had taught herself Spanish from library books. Her teachers called her extraordinary, but extraordinary doesn't pay rent in America. A full scholarship to Emory University led to degrees in international relations and linguistics. French came naturally. Italian followed within months. Mandarin took longer, but she achieved fluency that impressed native speakers. During her senior year, Professor Elizabeth Chen, a former CIA analyst, saw something special in Madison's combination of linguistic gifts and analytical mind. 3 months after graduation, the Department of Defense offered Madison a position that would change everything. For 5 years, Madison lived the life of a cultural attaché. Embassy parties in Paris, trade negotiations in Beijing. But her real work happened in shadows. She gathered intelligence, using her linguistic abilities to overhear conversations that foreign officials thought were private. Her reports prevented terrorist attacks and exposed corruption schemes worth billions. Madison was a ghost who spoke every language and heard every secret. Until 2017, when everything collapsed. Madison discovered her handler, Deputy Director Thomas Morrison, was selling classified information to foreign governments. When she tried to report him, she faced trumped-up charges of mishandling classified documents. Her security clearance vanished overnight. The woman who had briefed senators found herself unemployed and unemployable, another casualty of a system that destroys those who threaten it. Educational credentials mean nothing when you can't pass background checks. Madison's resume, filled with classified assignments, looked like fiction to civilian employers. 8 months of savings disappeared like morning mist. The woman who had advised ambassadors found herself applying for retail jobs and being rejected because of gaps in her work history she legally couldn't explain. Carmen Rodriguez understood Madison's situation because she had lived it. Over coffee in Brooklyn, Carmen explained how the transition from classified work to civilian life broke many people. But she offered Madison something unexpected: hope and a job at Le Bernardin, Manhattan's most exclusive restaurant where power brokers made deals worth billions over 7-course meals. Carmen had worked there 3 years, witnessing conversations about insider trading, political bribes, plans to manipulate markets and destroy competitors. The restaurant's management never suspected their staff included former intelligence operatives. They saw them as invisible servants whose presence didn't matter, because their social status was irrelevant. It was perfect cover for what Carmen proposed, gathering intelligence on the corrupt elite who frequented the restaurant. Madison's first night was humbling in ways she hadn't expected. Her hands shook, carrying plates worth more than her monthly rent. Customers who wouldn't have acknowledged her when she wore diplomatic credentials now snapped fingers at her like a trained animal. But she endured, because she understood something they didn't. She was exactly where she needed to be. Within weeks, Madison identified the restaurant's most valuable intelligence targets. Richard Blackwood, the tech billionaire whose companies held government contracts worth hundreds of millions. Senator Michael Crawford, who chaired the committee overseeing financial regulations. Judge Patricia Wells, whose court handled white-collar criminal cases. Media mogul David Sterling, whose networks shaped public opinion on political and economic issues. These men met regularly in Le Bernardin's private dining rooms, believing their conversations were protected by walls and wealth. They never imagined their waitress spoke 5 languages fluently, had advanced degrees, and knew exactly how to gather intelligence that would stand up in federal court. Madison's training taught her that valuable information came from mundane moments. While targets focused on formal meetings and encrypted communications, they relaxed during casual conversations over expensive meals. They assumed service staff were either too unintelligent to understand complex discussions or too intimidated to act on what they overheard. Both assumptions proved fatally wrong. Madison began each shift reviewing evening reservations, identifying which tables would host valuable targets. She volunteered for private dining rooms where the most sensitive conversations occurred. Her colleagues were happy to let her handle demanding wealthy clients who treated service staff poorly. Her linguistic abilities allowed her to understand conversations targets assumed were secure. When Blackwood spoke with Chinese business partners in Mandarin about selling technology with military applications to foreign governments, Madison understood every word. When Senator Crawford met with lobbyists using coded language about legislative favors, Madison recognized the patterns from her intelligence training. Understanding conversations was only the first step. Madison needed evidence that would convince prosecutors and withstand legal challenges. She began carrying a small recording device disguised as a pen that could capture hours of audio while appearing completely innocuous. The military-grade device was designed for covert operations and virtually undetectable. Over 18 months, Madison documented conversations revealing a conspiracy reaching the highest levels of American government and business. Blackwood was selling advanced technology to hostile foreign governments in exchange for market access and personal payments. Senator Crawford was accepting bribes to kill legislation regulating financial crimes. Judge Wells was fixing high-profile cases in exchange for investments in shell companies. Media mogul Sterling was coordinating with foreign intelligence services to spread disinformation through his networks. The scope was staggering. These men weren't engaging in individual corruption. They were operating as a coordinated network undermining American national security for personal profit. Madison realized she had uncovered something that could bring down entire sectors of the American establishment. But she knew the dangers. Her intelligence training taught her that people with this much to lose would kill to protect secrets. 3 whistleblowers who had tried to expose similar corruption in recent years had died in suspicious circumstances. Madison understood that once she revealed what she knew, her life would never be safe again. The recordings revealed plans for what they called Operation Clearwater, a coordinated effort to manipulate upcoming elections, crash specific sectors of the stock market, and eliminate political opponents who threatened their interests. Madison was documenting the most significant intelligence coup in decades. March 15, 2019, started like any other evening. Madison arrived at 4:30, reviewed reservations, and noted that Blackwood had reserved the largest private dining room for 8 guests. The list read like a directory of American power. Senator Crawford, Judge Wells, 3 defense contractor CEOs, 2 hedge fund managers, and a major newspaper publisher. Madison volunteered to serve the private dining room, knowing this would be the most important intelligence-gathering opportunity of her operation. As the evening progressed, she listened to conversations confirming her worst fears about the conspiracy's depth. Blackwood outlined how his technology companies would provide surveillance capabilities to foreign governments in exchange for electoral interference supporting their preferred candidates. Senator Crawford detailed how he would use his committee position to block investigations. Judge Wells explained how she would ensure cases against conspiracy members would be dismissed or result in minimal penalties. The conversation was damning enough to result in treason charges for multiple participants. Madison's recording device captured every word, every laugh, every casual reference to destroying lives and undermining democracy for personal profit. She was documenting evidence that would change American history, but Madison had been so focused on the conversation that she didn't notice she had been standing near the table longer than normal service required. Blackwood, paranoid about surveillance after years of illegal activities, became suspicious of her presence. When Madison approached to refill water glasses, Blackwood tested her with a question in rapid Mandarin, asking if she understood their discussion. Madison's training kicked in. Responding would blow her cover, but her slight hesitation raised his suspicions further. That's when Blackwood decided to humiliate her publicly, using the French menu as a weapon to demonstrate her supposed ignorance and prove to his colleagues that she was harmless. He called attention to her presence and demanded she read the most complex French descriptions on the menu, expecting her to stumble and prove she couldn't understand sophisticated language. "She can't even read the menu." His laughter filled the private dining room as his guests joined in mocking the waitress who supposedly couldn't read French. Madison absorbed every cruel word while calculating how to escape with evidence that could destroy them all. Madison faced an impossible choice. Demonstrating her linguistic abilities would prove she could understand the conversation she had been overhearing, potentially exposing her intelligence operation before she could deliver evidence to authorities. But allowing herself to be humiliated would maintain her cover and protect the investigation that could bring down the entire conspiracy. She chose humiliation. As Blackwood's mockery echoed through the room, Madison maintained her facade while internally preparing for what would come next. But Blackwood's paranoia had been triggered. After Madison left, he turned to his security chief, former CIA operative Marcus Webb, and shared his suspicions. Webb immediately began investigating Madison's background. Within hours, he discovered discrepancies in her employment history and identified her previous government service. By morning, he had confirmed Madison Harper was a former intelligence operative with the exact skill set needed to understand and document everything the conspiracy had discussed. The realization sent shockwaves through the group. They had been speaking freely in front of someone capable of bringing down their entire operation. Panic set in as they realized the scope of their exposure and potential consequences if Madison had been recording their conversations. The conspiracy moved quickly to neutralize Madison before she could act. Blackwood used media connections to plant stories suggesting Madison was a disgruntled former government employee with psychological problems and a history of making false accusations. Senator Crawford pressured the Justice Department to investigate Madison's handling of classified materials during her previous service. Judge Wells used law enforcement connections to ensure any evidence Madison presented would face immediate legal challenges. The coordinated attack was designed to destroy Madison's credibility before she could present evidence to authorities. But Madison had anticipated this response. Her intelligence training taught her that powerful targets would use every resource to protect themselves when threatened. She had spent months developing contingency plans for exactly this situation, hiding copies of evidence in multiple secure locations and preparing detailed documentation of her intelligence-gathering methods. Most importantly, Madison had learned from previous whistleblowers' mistakes. Instead of approaching authorities directly, she had built relationships with investigative journalists who could publish the story simultaneously with any official investigation, making it impossible for the conspiracy to suppress evidence. On March 18th, 3 days after the fateful dinner, Madison contacted Sarah Chen, an investigative reporter for the Washington Post who specialized in corruption cases. Chen had built a reputation for protecting sources and had resources to verify complex evidence. Madison's first meeting with Chen lasted 6 hours. The evidence was overwhelming. Hundreds of hours of recordings, financial documents Madison had photographed during her time at the restaurant, and communications clearly demonstrating the conspiracy's scope. Chen immediately recognized the significance of what Madison had uncovered. This wasn't just another corruption story. It was evidence of a coordinated attack on American democracy by some of the country's most powerful figures. Chen's investigation took 2 months to complete. Working with reporters and forensic accountants, she verified every aspect of Madison's evidence. The recordings were authenticated by audio experts. Financial documents were confirmed through independent sources. The pattern of coordination between conspiracy members was undeniable. As Chen prepared to publish, the conspiracy made desperate attempts to stop her. Blackwood used influence with the Post's advertisers to pressure newspaper management. Senator Crawford threatened congressional investigations into the Post's business practices. Judge Wells suggested publishing unverified allegations could result in massive libel lawsuits, but Chen had faced similar threats before. Instead of backing down, she accelerated her timeline and prepared to publish simultaneously, with federal authorities launching their investigation. On May 22, 2019, Chen's investigation was published as a front-page story in the Washington Post. The headline read, "Secret recordings reveal high-level conspiracy to undermine elections and sell military technology." Simultaneously, the FBI executed search warrants at homes and offices of all conspiracy members. The public reaction was immediate and explosive. The story dominated news cycles for weeks as Americans learned how close their democracy had come to being sold to the highest bidder. Protests erupted in major cities demanding accountability for the conspirators. The legal proceedings that followed were among the most significant in American history. Blackwood was charged with 23 felonies including treason, bribery, and conspiracy to defraud the United States. He was sentenced to 35 years in federal prison and forfeited assets worth over $2 billion. Senator Crawford faced 17 charges including bribery and conspiracy. His conviction resulted in expulsion from the Senate and a 25-year prison sentence. Judge Wells was removed from the bench, disbarred, and sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. The other conspiracy members received sentences ranging from 10 to 20 years. Madison Harper emerged as one of the most significant whistleblowers in American history. Her courage in gathering evidence despite personal danger, and her decision to come forward despite risks to her safety, had prevented what prosecutors described as a coordinated attack on American democracy. Today, Madison lives under an assumed name in an undisclosed location, continuing to work with federal authorities on corruption cases. Her story serves as a reminder that heroism comes from unexpected places, and that the people society overlooks may be the ones with power to save it. The restaurant where it began, Le Bernardin, continues serving expensive meals to wealthy clients. But the private dining rooms where conspiracies were once planned now operate under federal oversight. The laughs that once echoed through those rooms, mocking a waitress who supposedly couldn't read French, have been replaced by careful whispers of people who understand that anyone might be listening. Madison Harper proved that intelligence, courage, and integrity can triumph over wealth, power, and corruption. Sometimes the most powerful people in the room are the ones nobody notices. And sometimes the most important conversations are overheard by those who are supposed to be invisible.